I want parents to have hope. There really is a lot that can be done, especially with anxiety. We know how to treat anxiety. There's no reason to suffer without care.
You're listening to the Mindful Mama podcast, episode number 278. Today, we're talking about how to help kids face their fears with Dr. Aude Henin. Welcome to the Mindful Mama podcast, now with over 1 million downloads. Here, it's about becoming a less irritable, more joyful parent. At Mindful Mama, we know that you cannot give what you do not have, and when you've calm and peace within, then you can give it to your children. I'm your host, Hunter Clark-Field's Mindful Mama mentor. I help smart, thoughtful parents stay calm so they can have strong, connected relationships with their children. I've been practicing mindfulness for over 20 years. I'm the creator of Mindful Parenting, and I'm the author of Raising Good Humans, a mindful guide to breaking the cycle of reactive parenting and raising kind, confident kids. Hey, welcome back to the Mindful Mama podcast. I am so glad you are here. I'm so excited to dive into this episode, but first I just want to say hello to you. Thank you. I really appreciate you taking the time to spend some time with me and my awesome guest. And I can tell you this is going to be a super valuable episode because in just a moment, we are going to be sitting down with Dr. Aude Henin. She is co-founder and co-director of the Child Cognitive Behavior Program and clinical director of the Child Resiliency Program at the Department of Psychiatry at Massachusetts General Hospital and an assistant professor of psychology at Harvard Medical School. She's got the goods on this subject. She specializes in the assessment and cognitive behavioral treatment, CBT is what we're going to talk about, of children with mood, autism, spectrum, disruptive behavior, and other anxiety disorders. So, this episode is all about fears. As children get older, they begin to realize just how big the world is, and it can trigger fears and create anxiety. And so they're looking to us for reassurance and guidance and how can we give that best? This is going to be a really valuable episode for you. We're going to talk about helping children cope with stress, anxiety, and OCD and how to help our children work towards facing their fears. And we're going to also talk about when to recognize when our children need additional support. So you're going to learn effective tools for dealing with difficult emotions, what anxiety looks like when it's expressed at different ages. And I know that you are going to get so much out of this episode. Before we do, I just want to give a shout out. Haven't done this in a while, but I want to give a shout out to Kimbrey for her 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. She said it's the best podcast, and she was just so kind and exuberant. I just really appreciate that, Kimbrey. And she said that I don't listen to every episode of other podcasts I subscribe to, but I never miss an episode of this one. And I'm constantly sharing episodes with others when they have a question on something. There's an episode for that. So cool. That makes me smile. You have no idea. So thank you so much, Kimbrey. I appreciate your 5-star review. It means a lot to me and it helps the podcast get to more ears. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And then also before we dive in, I want to let you know some exciting news that we have extended the deadline for the 2021 Mindful Parenting Teacher Certification Program. This program is exploding. It's so exciting. I'm seeing people teach mindful parenting in their communities all around the world, and they're getting results. It's so exciting. So anyway, it teaches you to bring the 8 transformative modules of mindful parenting to your local community. It's basically win-win-win. You get to change families' lives by improving relationships in your local community. You deepen your own understanding and really master the principles of mindful parenting, and you can earn an income doing work that really matters. So we only have 6 spots open. So if you would like, there's all the details as to the times, so you can check your time zone. We have the dates, we have the tuition, everything you need to know about it, even a video with a Q&A session with the current MPTTs, as we call them, is all at mindfulparentingcourse.com/teach. That's at mindfulparentingcourse.com/teach. And that deadline is now June 30th, but get in early because we have 2 spots and we only have 1 place available on one of the groups. So check it out early. And this is, especially for you, if maybe you're a parent coach, you're a therapist or a teacher, and you may have been doing some of this work and you want to take the mindful parenting method and bring it out into the world. And it also includes the time for you to go through the prerequisite mindful parenting course the first time through the summer. So that's why we're enrolling now. All right, but I don't want to blab on and on about that. I want you to dive into understanding how to help children take care of their fears. So let's dive into this episode with Dr. Aude Henin. Aude, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Actually, is it okay if I'm calling you Aude, but do you want me to call you Dr. Henin?
Oh, it is perfectly fine. And thank you for having me on.
Oh, I'm glad to talk to you. I think that you can help us with so many different ailments that are kind of happening in this time. But I obviously anxiety and stress is such a huge thing that's going on right now. And the listener may not know this yet, but I was just sharing with you, my own daughter, my 14-year-old, got diagnosed positive for COVID. She's asymptomatic. She's the most careful out of all of us, and we think she might have happened in a swim practice. But anyway,
I'm
there's
sorry
no
to hear
like
that.
there's no like health things, but it's hard. It's like
Yeah.
scary and anxious. And that first night, no one slept really well. Um, there's a lot of stuff. I mean, and this is
Yeah.
just me, and that's pretty like a minor thing. I know there's so much more going on for so many people, but like maybe you could talk to us, start us off a little bit by like what are you seeing, what's happening for kids and teens, and as far as anxiety that
Yeah.
since the pandemic.
So, as you're saying, anxiety really has been at the forefront of kids' experiences, since the beginning. I think the amount of uncertainty, of unpredictability, of change has been so hard for everyone, but especially kids and teens. And it's hard because we as the adults don't have many, if any, of the answers. And so we're all kind of muddling through as best we can. But for kids, it has been very, very stressful. And we've seen, I think the anxiety and the experiences have shifted over time. So I think initially there was so much fear about the virus itself and what that meant and what was going to happen. And then we've seen over time additional worries about family members who have had to go back to work, who are on the front lines, and their health, worries about finances and parental unemployment, worries about school, worries about friends. So it just sort of keeps adding up. And I think what we're also starting to see, unfortunately, a lot of is a lot of depression,
Hmm.
a lot of withdrawal. We're starting to see increased suicide rates and suicide attempts. It's been a very long year, and I think people's resiliency is starting to get stretched pretty thin, unfortunately.
Yeah, even in my own family with my 14-year-old, I consider her a really resilient kid. She has a lot of resources. She's pretty grounded, but she'd been definitely a little depressed like over the winter. And now I don't know. I can only, at the moment, we're in quarantine, I can only FaceTime her from
Yeah,
downstairs while she's upstairs. So I
yeah,
don't know what's going on with her, but
yeah,
I think she's, from what I understand from our conversation, 12 feet away from each other in the woods that we had the other day
oh,
outside of our house. She's pretty depressed. And
yeah,
that this is like in a pretty well resourced
yeah,
household. So if
yeah,
you're having all these other challenges, yeah,
yeah.
it's got to be an enormous. I mean, there's going to be kind of like a tidal wave of effects, I imagine, from this collectively.
It, I absolutely, and I think we're going to see the effects even when things get back to quote unquote normal. I think those effects will also persist, right? So
Mm-hmm.
these aren't light switches of emotion that you turn off and on. So I think it's going to take a while for kids and teens and young adults to rebound. Uh,
Mhm.
and even the return to school or return to a more typical function, I think, is also very anxiety provoking. It's
Yeah.
another big change, and even though it's positive, we're hearing a lot of kids express a lot of anxiety and stress around what that's going to look like, what that's going to mean, how they're going to adjust to this new schedule yet again. So I think the stress is not quite over yet.
Yeah, like, that was one of the big reasons that was the reason we wanted her tested was, like, so she could go back to school for her mental health. It's
Yeah,
so, like,
yeah,
ironic, you know? It's like,
yeah.
"Oh my god." And that was the only reason we caught the positive
The test.
diagnosis. Yeah,
Yeah.
so that's a big transition too. Um, what for kids who are, I mean, for younger kids, I mean, I'm curious about how we can kind of spot when kids are having anxiety. And you may need to answer this versus like for younger kids versus older kids, because I guess what I'm personally seeing now in my older kids now is that like, they are immersing themselves in this like lots of Minecraft
Yeah.
and things like that which maybe is withdrawal. I'm not sure. So talk to us a little bit about what are some of the like signs that we're seeing issues and things come up around this.
Yeah, so you're absolutely right that the age of the child, their developmental level makes a big difference in how they express it. And there's also a lot of individual differences. And a certain amount of anxiety and disheartenment is completely normal. I think we're all
Yeah.
experiencing a fair amount of that.
Yeah.
And for younger kids, because they lack the language to express some of their fears or worries, they may exhibit it more behaviorally. So for some kids, we're seeing that they're more clingy or whiny, that old fears that had gotten better may be coming back. That they may be anxious to be away from parents or afraid of the dark, or having trouble sleeping on their own. They may be regressing in behaviors like toileting or thumb sucking. They may have tantrums and kind of act out a little bit more. And then for older kids, some kids are really able to express what's on their mind, and they'll share what their worries and fears and concerns are. But some older kids too just sort of try to, as you're saying, shut things out and distract themselves and not think, not feel. And for a lot of kids, that's using technology, social media, TV, because there's not a whole lot else available, honestly, to them. I think for even older teens, some of them might be experimenting with substances more, or trying other ways to not feel the negative feelings that they're having. And so I think it's really making sure that we check in with kids regularly, because often
Mhm.
kids may not initiate those conversations. It's kind of hard for them. So making sure that that we're there and that we're checking in and asking how they're doing, asking what's on their mind, asking, if there's anything that's causing them stress, um,
Mm. Mhm.
and
And
giving them those.
would that be the language you use? Is there anything that's causing you stress? Like maybe that might work for my 11-year-old. But I mean, like I see all those like comforting, distracting behaviors. I see those. My 11-year-old walks around the house with headphones permanently glued to her
Yeah,
head, listening to Harry Potter or Wings of Fire. So
right,
it's like distracting. Okay.
right. And again, that's not necessarily a bad thing,
Yeah, yeah.
right?
It's like comforting, right?
It's
I mean,
comforting, and we all need something. And
yeah, yeah.
any we always say that any coping strategy is fine. It's if it's getting overused, right? When
Mm,
people have only their one go-to strategy that they use all the time, it gets a little bit less helpful.
mm, mhm,
So sometimes you try to diversify a little bit, making sure that they're still sometimes going outside, or connecting with friends, or connecting with family, or doing an activity that isn't involving the phone or some other screen. And I think you can offer it to kids, and they may not take you up on it,
mhm,
but just knowing that you're there and paying attention to signs that they are in a place to talk and trying to capitalize on that is a really good thing to do. Sometimes kids will just, no, I'm fine, I'm good. The one word answers that kind of say, I'm not kind of in that space. But then other times, for example, if you're riding in the car together, that's often a good place where kids will talk, or, at bedtime, if you're just kind of snuggling or reading together, those are times where they might open up a little bit, and
Mm,
just listening and
mm,
allowing them to talk, and not jumping into, well, have you thought about doing this? Or have you talked to this
mm.
person? Or have you thought about this or that? And just allowing them to express and just reflecting back can really allow them to open up, so you can get a sense of what's on their minds.
Mm.
Um, and that can even sometimes be a habit that then kids, if it's a positive experience, might be more likely to do that again.
Stay tuned for more Mindful Mama podcast right after this break. We are proud to be supported by Chime, which makes me want to just make that chime sound. Here's what it is. Your bank account should be working for you, right? Not against you. And what Chime is an award-winning app and debit card with no hidden fees or monthly minimums. After all, you earned your money, you deserve to keep it. You don't need to have all those fees. There's fee-free overdraft on up to $200 in debit purchases with SpotMe. It's like overdraft protection, but better. You can get your paycheck, your benefits, your stimulus check, and tax returns up to 2 days earlier with direct deposit. There's no hidden fees or monthly minimums, plus 38,000 fee-free ATMs with MoneyPass and Visa Plus Alliance, and the security. You can turn on alerts to let you know when your card is used and instantly block your card if something seems fishy. Plus, you can save on autopilot. When you sign up for a Chime spending account, you can enroll in an optional savings account and grow your savings automatically with a 0.5% annual percentage yield. That's 10 times the national average. Join the millions on Chime. Sign up takes 2 minutes and doesn't affect your credit score. Apply now at chime.com/hunter. That's Chime, CHIME.com/hunter. Chime is a financial technology company. Banking services are provided by the Bancorp Bank or Stride Bank N.A., members FDIC. Eligibility requirements and overdraft limits apply. Overdraft only applies to debit card purchases. Limits start at $20 and may be increased to $200 by Chime. Early direct deposit depends on the payer. Out-of-network cash withdrawal fees apply. Third-party and cash deposit fees may apply. Go to chime.com/hunter for the details. Yeah, I'm curious about we've talked about anxiety in a couple different ways here, and
Mm,
we as parents worry that our kids might be worrying, right?
yeah.
And so we want to help them, but then we may, can it be that parents kind of exacerbate a problem by like making their kids think I have a terrible problem by offering all this like help. You know what I mean? Like there's a line there, right? Like we want to be listened, we want to be present, but
Yeah.
and we want to have our kids to have coping skills, but is there a line where it's like um, I keep offering you all this coping skills. Mom keeps offering me all these coping skills. There must be something terribly wrong with me, you know? So
Yeah.
tell me a little bit about that.
No, I think that's a fair point, and I don't think we want to be micromanaging. If you keep asking a kid, "Are you sure you're okay?" I don't know, "Are you sure? Are you sure?" Then kids will start to wonder, "Maybe I'm not."
Yeah.
So I think of it more as a casual conversation, rather than a probing interrogation. And some kids really are fine. I don't assume that all kids are suffering or struggling.
Mhm.
Um, I'm also cautious about offering too much advice and too many coping skills. I think kids are getting a little bit tired of being taught how to cope all the time.
That might be true. Yeah, that's probably a danger like myself and my listeners are in danger of like offering that's what I was thinking like offering too much, too many strategies and things like that.
I think the key is to be frequently reading the child, and recognizing who your kid is and what tends to work for them. If they have never been interested or wanted to do a peaceful meditation, that's okay, right? They don't have to do that. And I think the more we try to push it on them and make them, the more resistant they become. But maybe there are other ways that they meditate or are mindful that works for them. You can be mindful playing basketball. You can
Yeah.
be mindful listening to music. You can jump on a trampoline. So there's, I think, really knowing who your kid is and making sure that whatever tools we suggest or encourage really fits them, I think is really important.
I think this is all pointing back to parents' own an- coping with their own anxieties, right? Rather, because when if we're offering 10 bazillion tools to our kids, it's not about our kids' anxiety there. It's really our own anxiety that we have
Yeah.
to practice taking care of our own feelings so that we can just be more just accepting of our children for who they are.
Absolutely. And I think that's one of the really hard things about this pandemic is we are all in it together. It's not that the kids are experiencing something like middle school, which we can remember, but are not in the throes of and can help with. We're all muddling through our own stress, anxiety, and difficulty at the same time. And your point is also important that kids pay attention to what we do more than what we say. And I think we've all been humbled that we're telling our kids not to be on screens, but we're on our phones 24/7, as well. And so modeling other ways of coping and having it be kind of in the water as opposed to talked about is helpful.
Hmm. Okay. All right. Cool. So we want to look for in younger kids, we want to look for who lack language. We want to look for regression,
Yeah.
and maybe behaviors.
Yeah.
And then for older kids, we're looking for we're trying to be there to just listen and to kind of be a sounding board and just be in tune with what's going on. So that requires us putting down our phones
Right.
and
Yes.
looking and listening and being attentive, being present to kind of what's going on, Okay, so if we how do we know if it's a mental health issue that a kid needs help from somebody professional?
That's a really good question. So in general, we think about an emotion or a behavior as being more concerning if it is persistent, if it is really intense and distressing, or if it's interfering in the child's life. So if it's keeping them from doing things that they need to do or want to do, then we might consider and recommend professional help. Um, at the same time, I also think that we often wait too long. Many of my colleagues say that only in the field of psychology and psychiatry do we wait until things are terrible to treat. So in cardiology, you would never say, well, you have high cholesterol and there's some blockage and some arteries, but when you have your first heart attack, that's when you should come see me. And in psychiatry, we say, well, you're really struggling, but you're still going to school and you seem really unhappy, but you're not expressing suicidal thoughts. So, we're just going to kind of wait. So, not that
Yeah.
I think that everybody should be in therapy or in treatment, but I just think sometimes it would be easier and maybe more beneficial to intervene earlier,
Hmm.
even if things are low level.
Hmm.
It's easier to work with an anxiety that is newer or that isn't severely interfering as opposed to waiting till it is.
Hmm.
And I think there's lots that can be done at every level, even by parents, to support their kids when they're experiencing these things.
I appreciate that point of view. I think that can be helpful for parents to say, "Oh, okay." And if we're saying, "Well, we could get help even though this isn't such a huge big problem," we're normalizing getting help in our lives too, right? So
Yeah,
so that has an added
exactly.
benefit. Okay, so then what are things that parents can do to help their kids cope? No, understanding that we don't want to go overboard with our
Overboard.
coping
Yeah,
offers. Do-
yeah. No, and it's a really good question, right? So and knowing what you can do is helpful.
yeah.
And but also knowing that kids will come to it and accept it when they're ready and not a second before, that's also helpful to know. So there's some of the basics, and I'm sure everyone is saying this, and I but the older I get, the more I really appreciate that some of the tried and true, everything that your grandmother ever told you needed to do, are actually really important. So we know that getting good sleep is critical. And good sleep isn't just the amount of sleep, um, but also the timing. So the more regular schedules can be, and I know I have almost 15-year-old, so I know that that sometimes feels almost impossible. And making sure that the quality of sleep is good, um, getting outside, getting sunlight, getting physical exercise regularly, having meaningful or important things to do is really key to mental health. So things that the child cares about, things that they're invested in, things that make them feel good about themselves, social connection, all of these kind of basic things on which mental health is built have to be in place, or else none of our interventions really will be all that effective. And then I think beyond that, uh, and in an individual way. So again, recognizing who the child is, thinking about what are skills that they can use to manage difficult situations. So it is important for kids to have challenges, to have the opportunity to flex a little bit their coping skills. Now we're getting that in spades right now, so I don't feel like as though we need to add any more. Um, and and not to be overwhelmed by that, but to really have opportunities to practice things like problem solving. Right, when a
Mm.
situation comes up, how can you think through different ways of addressing it, and evaluate those solutions and then come up with a plan.
I
Um,
love this so much because in mindful parenting, we teach win-win problem solving method, and I always ask every member to start with a positive problem, like, what are we gonna do this weekend, or where are we going? And we go through a process
yeah,
to involve kids in the problem solving. And what's
yes,
beautiful about that is that kids learn this skill, right, that they need for their life. And so we can do that with a positive problem, like, what are we gonna do? And we can also, if we're in the habit of that, we can do that with challenging problems like, oh, like we've been all feeling anxious and depressed
yeah.
recently because it's like gray and about to snow 5 inches and we're stuck in the house because we're quarantined for 10 days.
For example,
For example, not to get too specific here.
I think what you're saying is so important, and I love the idea of bringing kids into the problem solving, even at a young age.
Yes.
I think as adults, sometimes we tend to do it for them, and that's where we become solution generating machines. But that is much less helpful than having kids involved in thinking through, obviously in an age appropriate way,
Yeah.
thinking through what to do and involving them in a genuine way in generating solutions. I
Yes.
think that's excellent, and I love the idea of a positive problem as a starting point.
All right, so sleep, outside, sunlight, meaningful, important things to do. I know it's so funny because, and exercise, it's so funny because I've been thinking about those recently, and it's like cold and raining, and my quarantine teen is stuck in her room. I'm like, honey, I'm yelling through the door, do the 7-minute workout.
So to be fair, I think a lot of what I'm saying is probably harder to do when you're in full quarantine. I'm not
Yes,
sure.
yes, yes. Let's
I
not
think you
assume
might.
we're all in full quarantine.
Yeah, I
It
think we
is.
might need to give quarantine a bit of a break. But outside of those 14 days, hopefully, yeah, implementing some of these things.
Yeah.
Um, and then learning how to tolerate, well, first identify and tolerate negative emotions. And this is where some of the mindfulness and
Mhm.
acceptance and emotion regulation skills, that sometimes there's nothing you can do about a situation. And so then all you can do is help yourself kind of survive it, get through it, and tolerate it as best as you can. And I think those are also key skills that kids can and need to learn.
Stay tuned for more Mindful Mama podcast right after this break. 5 years ago, Felix Gray realized that our eyes weren't meant to look at screens all day. And they designed glasses to make sure that daily screen time is more comfortable and the workday is more productive. Because what Felix Gray does is they make lenses that filter 15 times more blue light that can make screen time tough on your eyes and disruptive to sleep. So I have the Felix Gray Hopper glasses in Seneca Mist, which I love. And it's a classic frame style and made from acetate and hand finished for durable, lightweight. They're really, really comfortable pair of glasses and they're pretty stylish. I'm pretty pleased with them. And these frames are wonderful. They're helping my eyes. I'm using them right now to look at the screen and it is really helping my eyes do the work that I need to do during the day. The blue light lenses come standard starting at $95 or you add your prescription at checkout starting at $145. If you're not sure if blue light glasses are right for you, you can start with the best in blue light. Try Felix Gray. So with their 30-day money back guarantee, there's nothing to lose but eye strain. So for me, I would get itchy and watery eyes. They'd be kind of tired. And it was all about my eyes for me, and sometimes a little bit of headache. And that can come from blue light sources such as smartphones and computers. And there's other blue light sources in your life too: Kindles, TVs, LED bulbs, and it can affect you in a lot of different ways. You can get poor sleep, inability to focus. But these glasses filter so much blue light, it makes a huge difference. Get yourself a pair of glasses made for the 21st century and designed for modern, hardworking eyes. Go to felixgrayglasses.com/hunter for the best blue light glasses on the market. That's Felix Gray, FELIXGRAY glasses.com/hunter. You can find that link right in the show notes of wherever you're listening to this. You click over to where your podcast player and look for the notes, and you can find that link, felixgradeglasses.com/hunter. There's free shipping, free returns, free exchanges. They're very high quality and you have 30-day money back guarantee. So you might as well try it out and save your eyes. That's felixgrayglasses.com/hunter. Yes, definitely. And you teach you specialize in cognitive behavioral treatment, CBT. Definitely heard a lot about that kind of, and its branch off ACT,
Yeah.
acceptance and
Like commitment
commitment. Okay,
therapy.
therapy.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So t- tell us about that. And that involves learning to tolerate and accept our difficult feelings, right?
Yeah. So, right, as you're saying, cognitive behavioral therapy is a set of different interventions that share some common features and also have some differences. And it's a talk therapy, but the goal is to help people, including kids, learn tools to manage difficult emotions and to be able to work towards their goals, whatever those may be. And the idea behind CBT is that you can break down things like anxiety into different parts. Like you can't just not be anxious if you're anxious, right? That
Mhm.
doesn't work. But anxiety involves body reactions. So there's the kind of fight or flight response that we all have when we're anxious. There are specific thought patterns that go along with anxiety, catastrophizing thoughts or what ifs. Um, for example, and then there are behaviors that go with anxiety. So when someone is anxious, they often try to avoid the situation that causes anxiety, which is a very reasonable thing to do, except that what we know is that the more people avoid, the more anxious they feel in those
Mm.
situations. And that's a lot of where the interference comes in that you have to keep avoiding more and more. And that then will prevent you from not only mastering the anxiety, but also from doing things that you need to or want to do.
Mhm.
And so CBT addresses each of those component parts in treatment. And we work with kids or teens in sessions on these things and then have them practice the skills at home as well.
Okay, cool. So I love that's mindfulness, right? Like what are
Yeah.
these body reactions? What are these thought patterns, right? How can I see and clearly what is really happening? I'm having sensations in my body. I'm having these thoughts. I'm recognizing these thoughts. I'm seeing these behaviors. So that's all very, very clear thinking, a clear seeing kind of stuff. And I imagine with kids, you might help them kind of scaffold A little bit, like, start with something easy, because I
Yes.
guess an example I think of this is, like, I think of my daughter wanted to get something my younger daughter wanted to get something nice for my older daughter, and I said, "Well," I said, We can walk to the convenience store, that's a mile away, like, we'll walk there
Mhm.
together, you can go buy something," and my kids have this and this is probably a very generational thing, have this, like, anxiety around just going into a convenience store and buying something,
Yeah.
which to my mind is ridiculous. Because like, when I was 7, I was in the store buying bubblegum, like, a few
Right.
blocks from my house that I had walked to by myself, and they're 11, 14. So it's like but it's like a whole different generation,
Yeah.
it's a whole new
Different.
world. I
Yeah.
know, I understand that, but I want them to be able to walk into a store,
Yeah.
you know? So, I mean, not that this is the anxiety that all kids are having, but just kind of thinking of as an example, you might
Mhm.
scaffold by right? I mean, talk to me a little about this, Ode.
No, and you're thinking you yeah, you're right on the money with that. So, with kids, but even with anyone, if you think about the ultimate goal, right? So if the ultimate
Mhm,
goal is to be able to go into a store by themselves and order something or buy something, we always sort of say, think about where you are now and
mhm,
think about steps to get to that ultimate goal.
mhm,
Because what we want to do is help kids feel successful. We want them to not get so overwhelmed that they can't do it and then avoid more, because that's not going to help with anxiety. And so thinking about, well, what's one step that
mm,
the child could do? So maybe it's going in with you and standing next to you while you buy something, or the next time, and once they get comfortable with that, then maybe the next step would be you do the talking but they hand the money to
mhm,
the cashier. And then maybe the next step is that they would do it, but you're right next to them, and they're
mhm,
not on their own, and so on. And you can really work with kids to create this kind of structure, these steps, so that they can eventually get to the end goal. And that's a lot of what we do in treatment. We want it to be collaborative. We want kids to feel empowered. We don't want them to feel that we're forcing them or manipulating them or tricking them. We want
mhm.
them to walk out saying, "Hey, I did it. That's awesome. It was a little hard, but I can do this."
So, what are some goals that kids who are suffering with anxiety bring into treatment that they're wanting to achieve?
A lot kids are maybe surprisingly motivated to feel better and to do things, and that's when we're doing our initial evaluation. That's what we're really trying to see. What is it that they want? What's the motivator for them? What would be different in their lives if they weren't feeling so anxious or so depressed? And we really want to use that to guide treatment. And so the
Mm,
particular goals might depend on the nature of the anxiety, or how it's being expressed. So for some kids, if they're very socially anxious and they find it very hard to interact with kids or adults that they don't know well, they might, want to be able to approach unfamiliar kids and talk to them, or go to a party. Not that we're doing that these days, but eventually. Or some kids are really anxious about being away from their parents, and they want to be able to stay home alone, or be able to go out without being very anxious. So it really depends, but the model of structuring it in a gradual, systematic way is really the same regardless of the specific nature of the anxiety.
So, like a parent who maybe has a younger kid who is regressing and is now
Mm.
having trouble going back to sleep,
Yeah.
kind of from what I'm hearing from you, Ode, is that what a parent might do then is say, well, you know, I have a need for you to go to sleep on your
Yeah.
own because
Yeah.
I want to have an hour or two at the end of the night by myself and this,
Mhm.
with my partner. This is important to me. You'd like to. How can we get there? And you might say, okay, you know, maybe, I'll sit with you for 5 minutes and hold your
Mhm.
hand, and then I'll leave for 3 minutes, and then I'll come and check on you, or something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
We start to think about what are those baby steps. But
Yeah.
I probably like we're just kind of I imagine it's like we're really trying to like not pathologize. Like this is
Yeah.
like, okay, this is what it is. And we're just coming in and saying, okay, how can I yeah. So tell me about that.
Yeah, so the nice thing about this is that this is something that works for everyone, and this is something that we all have to do. Everyone
Yeah.
is afraid of something or gets nervous in some situations, and the idea that gradually facing your fear is what makes it better is universal.
Mm,
And so this is actually, I think, one of the greatest skills we can teach kids. I always sort of say one of my favorite quotes is feel the fear and do it anyways.
mm,
And it's something I try to practice in my own life, which is hard sometimes. And I really try to encourage. It is a natural reaction to want to avoid situations that make us feel anxious and uncomfortable. That is, there's no pathology in that. And having the skill to gradually override that so that you can do things that are scary, that's really cool and really important. And so teaching that to kids is, I think, wonderful across the board. And you're right. So when we're working on something like sleeping in your own bed or whatever it is, really involving the child and thinking about it in terms of being brave. We talk a lot about that. And being brave doesn't mean that you're not scared. It means that you're scared, but you're going to push yourself to do it anyways.
mhm.
And so I think it's a really non-pathologizing way to to address the anxiety and build a sense of competence and confidence.
I think for myself, I get as like this super independent kid. Like I was a child who was like super independent. Like my parents were never home, and I was like walking around my town as a kid doing all kinds of things. I uh, and I imagine a lot of parents can get frustrated sometimes with their a kid's fear and reluctance to kind of do certain tasks,
Mm,
or to may be afraid to take that step. And so when that situation is happening, what do you advise for the parents and for the kids?
yeah. So that it is very common for parents to be frustrated, and especially when sometimes these things are affecting everyone's life.
Yeah.
It's making it hard for the family to function, or as you're saying, if parents aren't able to sleep or engage in other activities because they have to stay with their child all night, that takes a toll on everyone. But it is important to stay calm and not get angry because that's as much as possible. That's not going to be helpful to the child. And the idea is that kids are really doing the best that they can. Um, they're not being willful. They aren't happy with the situation either. They're just stuck. And
Mhm,
so we want to help unstick them. And
mhm,
getting angry and frustrated isn't going to unstick them. And so the question is, well, what can the child do? If they can't do what we're asking them to do, it probably means it's too hard.
mm,
But what can they do? I always sort of say the only option that's not on the table is doing nothing. That's the only one I kind of refuse to. Beyond that, I'm willing to think about anything that will help get us to the goal.
mhm,
And if you think about one way that we sometimes think about that be helpful is in terms of level of anxiety. So very few of us will do things that are an 8, a 9, or a 10 out of 10. I don't know
mhm.
about you, but something that's a 10 out of 10, I stay as far away from as possible. And if I do it once, I don't do it again. I learned my lesson with the
I am
trapeze.
not petting any spiders.
Correct. Right. Yep, I had visions of myself flying through the air on a trapeze. And it turns out when I got up there, I'm really scared of that. And yeah, that's not something I'm ever doing again. Let's just be clear. It was a little embarrassing when they have to lower you down slowly as you scream.
Oh
It's not
no.
particularly appealing.
I can so feel you though. I think we have more anxieties about those as things as we get older. Like, and I did a just a little digression. I did a a ropes like high in the trees ropes
Uh-huh.
course with my
Oh,
older
yeah.
daughter when she turned 10. She's like, "Oh, I can do it with you if you go with me." And I'm like, "I'm the brave one. Sure, here we go, honey." And I had to like clip her into these 50-foot trees. And then there was a part where we swung, like, on a trapeze, like, into, like, a net, and no one else was doing it, but I was like, like, screaming bloody murder.
Yeah.
It was like, I didn't know how afraid I was gonna be of that.
Right. It's probably a good thing to be afraid of falling from high places through the air,
Yeah,
hoping that this little clip is going to save you. I have a healthy respect for that. And so I think we can relate to that because that's
yeah,
sometimes what seems like a minor, unreasonable fear to us is actually that level of fear for the child.
yeah,
And so knowing that none of us are really particularly pleased with having to do those things, and if someone tried to force me to do it, I'd probably get kind of mad.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. Yeah,
We
you'd be
forget.
really defensive. Yeah. Oh, it's so helpful to like put it into a fear we can relate to.
Yeah, and we call it the fight or flight for a reason. We always forget about the fight part, but kids can get pretty angry and oppositional if we push them because that's what we're designed to do. So
Mm,
rather than push it to an extreme where the child is going to be overwhelmed, have it be such a negative experience, they're unlikely to do it again. We want to think about shooting for a range, especially at the beginning, along the lines of like a 3 out of 10.
mm,
Right, so how can we make this situation a 3 out of 10? Or maybe, like, at most a 5 out of 10? Because 3 or 5 out of 10 is unpleasant, but you can
mhm,
tolerate it, and you might
mhm,
be willing to do it again. And so really working with your child to think about and have them tell you, "Well, this would be a 3, this would be a 5, this would be a 7." That will help guide you as a parent in terms of where to push and where to back off.
mm.
So again, we don't want to be at a 0. We don't want to sort of support complete avoidance not encourage them, but we also don't want to push them so hard that they can't do it. And really kind of shooting for that middle ground, especially early on, I think is probably the most helpful way to think of it.
Stay tuned for more Mindful Mama podcast right after this break. I am thrilled that Thrive Cosmetics is a sponsor of the Mindful Mama podcast because I was a customer of Thrive Cosmetics long before they were a sponsor because they are freaking amazing. Their products are made with clean, high performance, skin loving ingredients. Their clinically proven formulas not only highlight your best features, truly, they actually improve your skin over time. All Thrive Cosmetics are products formulated without parabens, sulfates, and phthalates, which is really important to me that I want to put safe, clean ingredients on my skin. Thrive Cosmetics never tests on animals. They're Leaping Bunny and PETA certified as 100% vegan and cruelty free. And they have a bold mission, which is so cool. It's this bigger than beauty mission. And so, what it is that for every product purchased, Thrive Cosmetics donates to help women thrive. So, women who are emerging from homelessness, surviving domestic abuse, fighting cancer, and more. So, a couple products that I love. I know this is audio, so you can't see me, but I'm going to tell you about 3 products that I'm obsessed with that I use daily and I love them. One is the Liquid Lash Extensions Mascara. I have kind of wimpy eyelashes, and this is just the best. They make my eyelashes look longer, last forever. It is just the best mascara. It's not like clumpy, the best. You just have to take my word for that. And I love, love, love their Brilliant Eye Brightener. I have it in 2 colors. I have kind of like a rose gold that I put on the inside of my eyelid, but I also have this like mauve one that I just put all over the top of my eyelid. It makes my eyes just look really pretty, like super natural. It's not garish at all. I'm the kind of person who is a little uncertain how to use colors on my eyes, and this instantly works so well. A third thing that I love is the Instant Brow Fix Semi-Permanent Eyebrow Gel. It's like eyebrow gel that has a little mascara wand, and I have these kind of like wimpy sad eyebrows. So you kind of brush it on, and it makes your eyebrows look really good. It's waterproof, smudge-proof color that lasts all day that I can attest to. These 3 products are fabulous. They look amazing on everybody, so I highly, highly recommend them. I love everything about Thrive Cosmetics. Their products are the best I've ever used, and their bigger than beauty mission is truly inspiring. You're going to love them as much as I do. Visit thrivecosmetics.com/hunter for 15% off your first order. This is an exclusive offer that you can only get here. That's Thrive Cosmetics, CAUSEMETICS.com/hunter. And you can find that link right in your show notes wherever you're listening to this right now. You can just find the notes and click on that link. Thrivecosmetics.com/hunter. You'll get 15% off your first order. Thrivecosmetics.com/hunter. We thank them for sponsoring the podcast. I think that's a very helpful way of thinking about it. I really appreciate that. Now, if a parent's saying, Okay, I've offered my kids many coping skills, and and I'm worried about my child. I mean, I'm just curious. I mean, I think for a lot of us, if we're not involved in that world, how does a parent like go about finding a good someone good for their child to talk to? I mean, and if they're saying like, "Oh, this CBT sounds amazing," how do they go? How do they find? I mean, this is probably a simple answer, but I think it's a question many of us have, maybe.
No, it's a very important question, and I wish it were a simple answer, but especially right now, it's an incredibly difficult answer because the need for child mental health care is far outpacing availability. And so I know many parents are really frustrated because their child is in severe distress and they're not able to get in to see anyone for months.
Mm,
And that's a lifetime for a child. So I often say the first place to start is with your pediatrician. So if you
mm.
have concerns, even minor ones, talk to your pediatrician. Many of them do have connections with providers, psychologists, social workers who can offer some guidance or care. They can also, some of them also get training in behavioral health and can offer some interventions. Talk to your child's school, partner with them. So, really using the resources in the community and the supports that already are available to not feel like you're having to do this all by yourself or on your own.
Mhm.
For more minor concerns, there are a lot of excellent books out there around how to support your child with anxiety. And I'm happy to offer those references. There are some really
Sure. Do you
uh,
wanna offer a title or 2 here? Right
yeah,
here?
so Ron Rapay's book, help I think it's called Helping Your Anxious Child, is an excellent one. And Tamar Chansky also has a number of excellent books around anxiety and OCD that are well established. So those are great resources.
We'll try to get those into the show notes, dear listener.
Yeah. And I'm happy to provide the full reference in writing if that helps. And then there's some great organizations that have websites that are useful. So ADAA, the Anxiety and Depression Association of America, is fantastic, and they have a number of resources for parents and kids. Or if OCD is an issue, the IOCDF, so the International OCD Foundation, is another excellent resource.
What are some
Um,
signs of that? I mean, we all think of the, like, obsessive hand washing, I think, but what are some signs of that?
of OCD. So all kids have little rituals or routines, and those are very normal. But again, when they become excessive, so when they take a lot of time in the day, more than an hour, or when the child is extremely distressed by them, or if they can't do the ritual, or if the rituals are getting in the way of the child's functioning, then we consider those a problem. And you mentioned hand washing, but often, especially with kids, those aren't the kinds of symptoms that you
Okay.
see.
Mhm.
Um, Kids may have things such as symmetry, so needing to tap something with the other side of their body if they've tapped it with one side, or they may need to do things again and again a certain number of times until it feels right. May
Mm.
have special numbers that um, either are really bad or really good. So, for example, they may have to avoid the number three, but only have to do things four times. Um,
Mm.
they may have a lot of rewriting or rereading, so needing to erase, for example, and rewrite until things are perfect or just so. Um, they may have touching rituals where they have to touch things a certain way. So when we're thinking about OCD, it's really a pretty broad spectrum of potential behaviors, not just hand washing.
And I think as we kind of wrap this up, I guess I would ask, like, kind of what are your kind of final words for parents? Because I can imagine there would be a lot of, if we're seeing anxiety in our kids, if we're seeing our kids suffering, if we're seeing OCD behaviors, a lot of parents do a lot of self-blame. What did I do
Mm.
wrong? What's wrong with me? What how, these other parents, their kids are fine. My what's wrong? What's wrong with me? What's wrong with us? What did I do wrong?
As a parent, it's such a natural thing to look inwards and feel guilty and blame ourselves. I think that kind of comes with the territory of being a parent, but it really, it's not about what you did. It's also hard to remember, but 50% of people by the time they reach 25 will have had or have a serious mental health condition. So it's really not unusual. I think we act or think that this only happens to a few people, but it's really very common. And I want parents to have hope. There really is a lot that can be done, especially with anxiety. We know how to treat anxiety. There's no reason to suffer without care. And everyone is just doing the best that they can as parents. There's no guidebook. No one, a lot of what we're talking about is so counterintuitive and not part of how we think about parenting that it it is not your fault. You did not do this. And but there is a lot that you can do to help your child. And I really want parents to be left with a sense of hope and promise and not despair. Uh,
I really appreciate that, Ode. I think that's yeah, I love I love that like, we know how to deal with this. We there's help for your kid. Like
yeah,
it maybe you have to do some digging and some reaching,
yeah,
but this is figure outable. This is
yeah.
treatable. We can have happy, healthy kids on the other side of this. It may be hard now, but we can make progress and make things better.
Absolutely. Yeah, we want to take the long view. And I really think a lot of kids, even with this pandemic, will be okay in the long run.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully it'll give them a lot more resilience ultimately. I'm just kind of crossing my fingers around that
Yeah.
one.
Or at least some great stories to tell. And they'll be able to tell
Mm.
their grandkids that they were in the pandemic of 2020
Yeah,
in the
they'll be
history
like these
books.
old people saying, when I was in the pandemic of 2020, I couldn't even go to school.
Absolutely.
Oh my goodness. Well, I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for coming and sharing your expertise and your wisdom with us. I think it's incredibly helpful. Where can people find out more about you and the work you do?
Absolutely. And thank you for having me on. I so appreciate your focusing on this and giving me the opportunity to share some of this with your audience. So I am at Massachusetts General Hospital in the Department of Psychiatry. Yeah, you can look for us for our website. It's the MGH Child CBT program. And I feel like I'm all over the net right now in various ways. So if you look me up, it's an unusual name, so it's not hard to find.
Yes. Ode.
Oh,
Aude. I
UDE.
love that. Great. Well, thank you again so much. It's been a real pleasure. And I'm so glad that we can share this information and get it out to more ears. So, dear listener, if you know somebody that this can help, please do share it. Thank you so much, Ode.
Appreciate it.
What a great episode, right? So useful. I really appreciate Ode's, expertise and help. It's just so valuable. This like, learning how to take care of difficult feelings. We talk about this. It's a big part of what we do in the mindful parenting method. And it's so important. It's just something we weren't taught, right? So now we're teaching our kids, but we need to teach ourselves too. So valuable. I hope that this episode was helpful for you. I would love to see a screenshot of you listening to it, share it, take a screenshot and post it up in your Instagram stories. Tag me at Mindful Mama Mentor. And I've been doing some reels and different things. If you're a podcast listener only, I have been doing some Facebook Lives. I'm putting some on Instagram and doing some reels with the awesome Mindful Mama Mentor team behind me. I've had some space and time to put out some other awesome free content. So if you are interested in checking that out and joining the free Facebook group, just diving deeper, taking this podcast and taking it deeper, you can go to mindfulmamamentor.com or find me on Instagram at mindfulmamamentor. And I've got all kinds of links there and links on the website that you can take it further. And why not? Don't we want the best relationships we can have? It's so valuable. And don't we want to be present for this life? I was just sitting down with my husband Bill at lunch, and it's like a gorgeous day here in Delaware today. We're sitting down and talking about how useless worrying is and how, there are truly so many things that could go wrong in every single moment, but there are also so many things that could go right and are going right in every single moment. And it really depends on where we put our attention. What we focus on grows stronger. So we appreciate that right now you have two ears that can listen and we can connect in that way. And, you can breathe in and out, and you may be able to have eyes that can see so many colors. There are so many things to worry about in every single moment, but that doesn't help us. And there are so many things to appreciate in every moment, and that does help us. It's part of moving away from that default mind that is not so healthy. So I hope you have a great week, my friend. I will be back in your inbox and in your ears, and I cannot wait to connect again. Thank you for choosing to spend this time with me. I really, truly appreciate it. I understand that time is our most precious resource, and so I feel really honored that you're choosing to spend it with me. So thank you. And I will talk to you soon, my friend. Namaste.
I'd say definitely do it. It's really helpful. It will change your relationship with your kids for the better. It will help you communicate better. And I'd say communicate better as a person, as a wife, as a spouse. It's been really a positive influence in our lives. So definitely do it.
I'd say definitely do it. It's so worth it. The money really is inconsequential when you get so much benefit from being a better parent to your children and feeling like you're connecting more with them and not feeling like you're yelling all the time or you're like, why isn't things working? I would say definitely do it. It's so worth it. It'll change you.
No matter what age someone's child is, it's a great opportunity for personal growth, and it's a great investment in someone's family. I'm very thankful I had this.
You can continue in your old habits that aren't working, or you can learn some new tools and gain some perspective to shift everything in your parenting.
Are you frustrated by parenting? Do you listen to the experts and try all the tips and strategies, but you're just not seeing the results that you want? Or are you lost as to where to start? Does it all seem so overwhelming with too much to learn? Are you yearning for a community of people who get it, who also don't want to threaten and punish to create cooperation? Hi, I'm Hunter Clark-Fields, and if you answered yes to any of these questions, I want you to seriously consider the Mindful Parenting membership. You'll be joining hundreds of members who have discovered the path of mindful parenting and now have confidence and clarity in their parenting. This isn't just another parenting class. This is an opportunity to really discover your unique, lasting relationship, not only with your children, but with yourself. It will translate into lasting, connected relationships, not only with your children, but your partner too. Let me change your life. Go to mindfulparentingcourse.com to add your name to the waitlist, so you will be the first to be notified when I open the membership for enrollment. I look forward to seeing you on the inside. mindfulparentingcourse.com.